If you're shopping while working, eating, or even listening to this podcast, then you know and love the thrill of a deal. But are you getting the deal and cash back? Rakuten shoppers do. They get the brands they love, savings, and cash back. And you can get it too. Start getting cash back at your favorite stores like Target, Sephora, and even Expedia. Stack sales on top of cash back and feel what it's like to know you're maximizing the savings. It's easy to use, and you get your cash back sent to you through PayPal or check. The idea is simple. Stores pay Rakuten for sending them shoppers, and Rakuten shares the money with you as cash back. Download the free Rakuten app or go to Rakuten.com to start saving today. It's the most rewarding way to shop. That's Rakuten, Rakuten.com.
Hello, Havoc Wreakers, and welcome back to our little dose of hope every week. If you're just joining us, I'm Lauren Shippen, creator of 2000 and Late, and in an effort to balance out all the shitty stuff the audio drama tackles, I talked with some incredible artists, creators, and activists who are grappling with our twisted reality and doing hella cool stuff to counteract the bad. This week, I'm talking to Matt Klinman, a brilliant writer who I first met when I started organizing with the Writers Guild of America. He's actually the person who got me into that. And we talk about it, the annoying realities of unionizing, the strange moment the entertainment industry is in, and we also have some good laughs along the way. All right, here is my chat with Matt. So, Matt, you have been working as a writer and actor and director for many years. Just to get people familiar with your work, how did you get started? And more specifically, how did you find your way into audio?
Yeah, cool question. So I'm a comedian, right? Or I'm like a comedy writer. That was sort of how I started. So I started doing like sketch and improv comedy in college, but I guess professionally, I applied online to write headlines for the Onion News Network, which was like the video wing of the Onion. When I was like graduating college, I was like, how do I keep doing comedy? And they used to have a little thing on the website that was like, if you want to be a headline contributor, you can submit an application or whatever. And I submitted like 15 headlines, and looking back, they're bad, but I don't know. I guess they like saw something in them. So they like brought me on for a 6-month stint. Like they would kind of do these like 6-month rounds where you would submit headlines for their videos. And I sold enough, and I guess they liked my stuff enough that they kept having me do that. And I did that just religiously for like 2 years, I think, just like every Sunday submitting headlines. I really tried not to ever miss it. I like really tried to like do it diligently, and I was successful enough that basically when there was an opening on the staff, they offered me a position. I interviewed, and I became a staff writer in the New York Onion News Network office in like 2009, I think.
Oh, wow.
2010, maybe 2010. Yeah. And so then, that was like my first like job, full-time writing comedy. And it was awesome. We did all this, we wrote all these videos, we did all this stuff. And at the same time I was doing UCB in New York, and it was just like doing tons of comedy stuff. And around the same time, a good buddy of mine named Cyrus Garameni was in LA kind of beginning Earwolf. He was like one of the first interns at Earwolf. Okay. Yeah. Cool. And he was like starting that up, and I was like, I liked podcasts. I was like into that sort of stuff, and he was into it. And I guess just at one point, I think because I used to record music with him, like we were musicians, and I don't know, at some point I came and visited him, and he just showed me how to use Reaper. He was just like, here's how I do audio. He just like he gave me this crash course in Reaper. I guess I was asking about it. I don't know. But truly the things he showed me on that first like session when I just came out and hung out with him are like the foundation of me doing everything I've ever done in audio. Just like having somebody show you how to use Reaper and just do it.
That's all it takes.
Then it kind of does. And then I guess at some point, I don't know. So the Onion, I mean, like there's a whole story about the Onion crashing and burning in New York. There's a book just came out about it if someone's interested in the history of the Onion.
Oh, wow.
But we did this, or just like there's a whole book on the history of the Onion, but the New York office was like destroyed, and all of us like quit and protest, and all this sort of shit happened. But I basically around that time was then just like pitching shows and trying to be like a professional comedy person in New York. And Funny or Die opened up a new office in New York around the same time, and some friends of mine were doing that. I promise I'm going to get to audio in just a second.
No, I love this. I didn't know any of this.
Oh yeah, sure.
I knew you worked for Funny or Die, but I didn't know like how this all went.
Yeah, so they started a little office, and basically it was like I needed a day job while I also tried to like pitch shows or do like I don't know, try to get staffed on some other like whatever, like that kind of thing. A bunch of my friends were at Funny or Die. We were starting up Funny or Die News. They wanted to do something that was more newsy. I don't know, whatever. But at some point, I pitched along with another coworker doing. I guess podcasts were getting big. We were listening to them all the time, and we were like, we want to do a podcast. But we wanted to do a scripted one. Everyone still, even then, was just like, I mean, even when they didn't know what podcasts were, still people thought that it should just be two people chatting at a microphone or something like that.
Totally.
And we were like, no, we want to put effort into this. What if we put a lot of effort instead into this thing? And so we pitched and made this little show called Scienceology. And I think it came out in 2012. And truly, I do think it was one of the like first like scripted audio comedy things. And it was like these little, and we did like very short episodes. They were all, we tried to make them, they were kind of, they were like satirical. It was kind of like a fake Radio Lab or like a fake Invisibilia at the time, and very NPR-ish. And we really tried, I really like tried to learn sound design and tried to like learn how to record it and do all that sort of stuff. And so I really produced all those along with writing them and directing them with my co-creator, John Harris. And we made like a whole little season of those, and we got it featured on Apple. We did all this like sort of stuff. It was super cool. And we even did, we got a little bit of funding to do a much longer like second season that was never released. And I'm always like, cause Funny or Die wanted to get sponsors for it, but they never did. And then everybody everybody quit and Funny or Die fell apart or something like that. So I still sometimes I'm like, shit, I should try to go back and just re-release our second season of that. But it was cool. Yeah, and it was like a neat, so that was the first scripted thing I did. But then because of that, other comedy people started asking me to do audio stuff or like asking my advice or like for help on stuff. And around then I got pulled onto an Audible show. And that was the first like scripted, like this show called The 63rd Man on Audible starring John Cena.
That's right. I remember the billboards for that in LA, actually.
Yeah, they really like went all out promoting that one.
They did.
And I was just like a staff writer on that. So we just did like a week in a room breaking the story, and then we would like take scripts and stuff.
Nice.
And I guess I kind of got and then I kind of just kept getting pulled on to other ones, and then at the same time was just really enjoying it. And because I had done so much production and sound design and like had that background on it, I think that helped. But also when I was then making my own stuff with it, I kept like I would always like edit some portion of it or do some bit of it or whatever. And I always felt just like, there's nothing like making something where you feel like you have complete control over it and the ability to control it. And I don't think there's any medium that's better for that than doing scripted audio in a way, because I mean, with video, there's just so many elements and so like you really can't one man band it very well, or it's very hard to, at least for me, it's out of but for audio, it's a little bit easier and a little bit more intimate, and it's a little bit more like fun and possible is what I've found, at least. But also it all just went back to that one time when my friend gave me a crash course on how to do it. And if he had done that maybe in like Pro Tools or in some like video editing thing or whatever, or Pro Tools for that matter, I would like going down those like avenues. But no, I just do everything in Reaper.
I love that. I mean, I learned Adobe Audition in college for my music major to do some like very basic composing stuff. I don't know why I chose Adobe for that, but that's like still what I edit everything in, and I still like I'm editing the dialogue for 2000 and Late right now. Like I still do almost all of my own dialogue editing, even if I'm not sound designing it, because I think you're right. It's like that is the benefit of audio, is that you can do so much just with one person or just with like a really, really small team, which makes, we're always talking about barrier to entry being really low for audio, but I do think that's true. I had no idea though that you were in so early. Like 2012 is before Welcome to Night Vale came out. Like you were like OG. I had no idea.
Look, Lauren, I don't want to brag or whatever, but I'm an early mover on certain things. Well, but I didn't like keep doing, but like you've made way more shows than I ever, you know what I mean? Like produced way more episodes. I kind of, these are like, it's like small, like limited run shows and stuff. Because part of it was also like, I mean, this is all how it was with comedy. I mean, still kind of is, where you're just like chasing bubbles of funding. And digital was this like big bubble of funding, and then podcasts were this other like possible bubble of funding. And you sort of just like surf. Cable TV was like a bubble. You just kind of surf those waves when you do comedy. And I'm often somebody who's kind of like just like interested in like the forefront of like what the next medium or thing will be. So I like often am like brought onto those things. Also, that's when you can do the most experimental stuff, because like nobody's like cares, and you're just like trying shit. And I like doing that too. So yeah, but those are the first things that that was my way in, was by doing that.
That's awesome. And I mean, like with sort of being on the forefront of like new forms and sort of being all over the like 2010s comedy new media landscape, what was your way into the WGA, and like how did you end up joining? How did you feel about it at the time? Did it feel like a big deal?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I was stoked to join. I mean, it always was just like, oh, that's the thing that happens when you get on a TV show, is you join the WGA. And it wasn't like aspirational, but it was like cool when it like finally happened or whatever. I joined because some of the people that I made stuff with at The Onion, we made this YouTube series called Sex House that was like kind of like a cult hit that I would recommend people watch if they haven't seen Sex House before. But it's like it caught us a little bit, this little crew of mine, when The Onion shut down and we finally like left. We tried to start up on our own, just like that same writers group, and we started making some stuff on our own, and we pitched some stuff to Adult Swim. They were doing those late night infomercials at the time, like Too Many Cooks kind of like era. So we made a few infomercials for those. We made this one called For Profit Online University. We made this one called Smart Pipe. You can find all these on YouTube. Book of Christ. I genuinely would recommend them, especially FPOU and Smart Pipe, because I think we like predicted. I don't know. We're always like proud of how much we predicted, like how fucked up everything is in the tech world. And so those in particular, I feel like are very prescient if you watch those. But those infomercials, we made them with a production company in Los Angeles, and those were just WGA. The production company was WGA, and so even though we got paid fucking like barely anything for those, especially because we were splitting them 6 ways. We were splitting these like minuscule writer fees like 6 ways.
Oh god.
Because we insisted on being like this like crew of 6 of us that would like ride or die together and all this stuff. I think making those infomercials, that we all had to join the WGA to do it. So my friend, joining the WGA, like there is like a fee. So I joined the WGA East also, which is easier to join. There isn't as big of a fee, and I think if you do it in the West, you have to like get some provisional thing. You become like an apprentice writer for like 1 year before, and then you have to get another thing. But the WGA East just like lets you in right away, and they don't even charge you that much. A buddy of mine who directed, like one of those writers who also directed those infomercials, had to join the DGA, the Directors Guild, to do it, and he ended up paying like way more than he ever made from doing those infomercials just to join the DGA. So that was harder. But I think he was also like, yeah, I'm a director now, I'm going to do that. And I think he's always regretted that, because I don't think he really directed much else for the DGA, or at least hasn't yet. He still could. Very talented guy, Sam West, who directed some of that stuff. But anyway, so that was how I joined the WGA. And I didn't really think about it much other than like, oh, cool, this is WGA. But then when that was happening, we then also sold a pilot for an actual show to Adult Swim at the same time. And that was a bigger deal, I think, being in the WGA, because then that was like, that were being paid the like actual rate for like a WGA pilot, and like that was nice to not have. I mean, it was the lowest possible amount or whatever, but that was nice to like have all that baked in, and like the protections and all that sort of stuff. And that felt cool to like register my script with the WGA and like have this WGA script that we sold. We made the pilot, it came out great, I thought, but they didn't pick it up. But that was like, that also felt like kind of part of all that stuff for joining the WGA.
That's really, really cool. I don't think I realized that it's so funny. Like joining the WGA, and I'm not a member of the WGA, was never like,
oh no, still after all this, after all the free work that we've done organizing, they still haven't joined.
But it's funny that you mentioned sort of the fact that WGA West has like this like provisional thing, because way back when the Bright Sessions was first optioned for TV, it's been optioned thrice and has yet to make it past pilot script stage. One of those options was just like a renewal of an option that happened right before COVID, so it's like it really has been optioned twice. But I wrote a pilot script with my showrunner for the initial kind of round of like pitching to networks and stuff, and that did get like submitted to the WGA, and I like got like I had to like fill out an application to sort of like be like provisional or whatever, but like then nothing ever happened with it, so it's like I sort of fell off and like couldn't join. But it's interesting because it was like there was like this like complicated point system versus
Yeah, there's all this shit. If you'd done this in New York, Lauren, you'd be getting screeners to this day. Like, I hate to tell you this.
Well, listen, I pay my SAG dues and I get those screeners.
Oh, all right, then you're good.
I am a member of the Screen Actors Guild, which doesn't have an East and West at all. It's just sort of one big SAG-AFTRA family. And I've had many complicated feelings about SAG-AFTRA through the years, based on sort of being both a producer and an actor with them, and the pitfalls and the benefits of a guild and all of that kind of stuff. Like the fact that sometimes, you're paying more to join the union than you are making on the project that makes you eligible for the union. It's complicated. But when you first approached me, so we met back in February of 2020. I think you were like one of the last people that I met.
No, I think I remember that because we were going to have a second meeting and it was like it was the first time something had been canceled because of COVID for me personally. It was like we were all going to meet up at a bar and then it was like, nah. But you reached out because you and Bo Willimon, who was the president of the WJ East at the time, and who also incidentally wrote one of my favorite episodes of Andor. Absolutely. Yeah,
great
No Way Out. Or One Way Out.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, One Way Out.
One Way Out. Yeah, so good.
Yeah, absolutely.
The two of you were kind of gathering a bunch of writers together in LA because he was in town from New York to just like talk about audio and kind of like get a feeling for the community there. And that was like late February 2020. I think there was that. And then I think like 2 days later, I had a meeting at Blumhouse. And that was like my last time like ever having like a meeting in LA because now I live in Seattle.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But I remember being really, really excited when you reached out to me because I had sort of been going through it a little bit with SAG around some things and about their then lack of curiosity about the space. Now they've kind of changed their tune and they're very involved and it's great. But back then I was trying to kind of like beat the drum of like, you guys, like I'm here as a resource, like please like ask me about fiction podcasts. Like I have so much to say. And then here you come out of the blue being like, let's talk about the WGA and podcasts. I realized I don't really know like how you first kind of got the idea for that and sort of what the steps were to getting the Audio Alliance going. So if you would, could give us like an oral history of the Audio Alliance.
Yeah, totally. I will say, so just to like, I think the theme that I will say also of all this is like how surprised I have been through the whole process of how much it is just people wanting to do it or like wanting somebody putting like just being like people, I don't know. It's very people powered. It just really is. Yeah. But also at the same time, it's very frustrating and annoying. Like what totally. And these like unions are very frustrating and annoying. And I think like just sometimes there's windows when like the people power like overrides the annoying or the opposite will happen. And I think that's like a big sort of theme of this because unions are annoying. I just want to be very clear. Like I'm very pro
totally
union. I love unions, but they're annoying. Like they're very annoying, just much like progressive politics, much like liberals in general. We're all like
making things better is so annoying.
It's so annoying. It's so annoying, but also like, but the opposite of that is Satan. So you need to like
so much
try.
Worse. Exactly.
So I know because it's funny because like a bunch of people when I did do this, I think I like dumbly and naively just like did the right thing at the right time. And there so Drew Johnston, who also helped me start it, and who also wrote on 63rd Man with me, or 64th Man, I think is as it came out when we made it. We wrote it was 63rd, but then it came out as 64th because they miscounted the number of people on a football team. But Drew also wrote, but I guess he had been trying to get the WGA to recognize this as a thing for like a year or something.
Oh, okay.
And nobody cared or nobody thought about it and nobody was like whatever. But then I just went to this meetup that was happening at like a bar that was for WGA East members who were living in Los Angeles, which is like a little community of us WGA East members that live in the West. Bo Willimon, the president, was there, and I had just come out of I was actively writing on the Spotify show that you guys, that Atypical had a little bit of.
Yeah, we did sort of like we loaned out a producer to Kevin Bacon.
Totally. Yeah, so this Kevin Bacon show, the sixth final degree of Kevin Bacon,
the last degree of Kevin Bacon.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm not even remembering the own shows I've worked on. The last degree of Kevin Bacon. I was like in the writers' room for that, and it was kind of similar to the Audible thing. Honestly, it was even more it was much more even like a TV writer's room, except it paid a little bit less. And like not, I mean, like meaningfully less, but not that meaningfully less. I don't know, whatever. I think it was like the WGA minimum at the time is like for a staff writer was like a little over $3,000 a week, and this was paying like $2,500 a week or something like that.
That's pretty good.
So it was like, yeah, it was within spitting distance. It was like decent, and the whole thing felt like that, especially because we had big name actors on it. Kevin Bacon was on it. The process we were doing, it was a 10-week writers' room. It was just like working on one of these things for television, and again, we were making a decent amount of money. The only difference was it was not WGA protected, so we were not paying into health and pension. And I was like, if we just bump this up a little bit or whatever, just made these things WGA, I don't think it would cost Spotify or Audible that much more, and we would get health and pension. Like, that's all that really, like, to me, it was like that, because we just fucking live in a dumb country where you can't get health insurance unless you do it through something like this. So it was like, okay, if I want health insurance, I just need this to be WGA. And like any one of these projects maybe is a little below the minimum, but you cobble to a couple of things together and you can make your year. And I was like, that seems like a pretty reasonable ask. I don't know how that happens or whatever. Anyways, at this drinks, I was talking to Bo Williman. He was just like introducing himself around, and I was talking about that I was on this comedy show that was scripted, that was all these things with a big actor attached, but it wasn't WGA. And I was wondering if it was possible for it to become WGA. And he was like, oh my gosh, and these are happening all over? And I was like, well, I've been in 2, I guess. So I don't know.
They're happening at least twice.
Yeah, at least twice. And maybe it's like me, I'm like the rare lightning. But I knew some friends that had also done other ones. Anyways, I forget if I was in the process of selling another one, but still, I was like, yeah, these are happening. It feels more like a thing. Can we do this? And he was like, yes, absolutely. And then he was like, the next time in LA, let's get a bunch of people like this together and chat about it. And I think part of that was also for him to see that there were also other people who cared. And then I don't remember who put me in touch with you, but it was very much like, you need to talk to Lauren Shippen about this. She's going to be stoked. And I was like, great, that's awesome. Because I just knew a bunch of the people who had worked in comedies doing this, but I didn't know anybody else doing anything other than that. And so that was how that kind of came together. And we had a good little bit of momentum, even with the pandemic, to sort of get it started. And we had an organizer from the WJ, like Bo hooked that up. And they were like, yeah, this seems like something that we should do. Our members want to do it. That was the key. It was like, members want to do this, and there is something here to organize. So why don't we go for it? And so that was how that started.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I really do feel like that first year, maybe in part because of the pandemic, like we actually were able to really raise awareness and talk to people. And my memory of sort of that first year is like having a lot of conversations with like you and with the organizer and with other folks sort of on the organizing committee, which is now, I don't know, 20, 30 people. I haven't like checked the numbers of what the organizing committee is now. And just sort of getting awareness, because that was sort of the first step as far as I understood it, right? Like, obviously the ultimate goal is to get audio fiction covered under WGA contracts so that people can get pension and healthcare, and so that people can get, maybe a residual structure somewhere down the line, depending on how podcasting changes, all those things that the WGA does for like TV and film writers. But the first step was really like, we just need to make everybody aware that audio fiction is happening. And we need to make these larger companies aware that like they are hiring writers who are experts in their craft and who deserve to be paid at good rates and to pay into pension and health. And then it was just sort of a matter of like trying to convince this company and that company to take a WGA contract. Does that sound right to you, sort of as like the process as you remember it, and sort of like how one would go about unionizing something?
Yeah, totally. And I also I thought at the time, because you just think about institutions like a union as like they're also bosses. There's like the bosses you work for, but then there's this other thing, and they're also bosses. And if the boss wants to do something, then it just happens. Right. And so I think other people even who like joined, I remember a friend being like, I don't understand, why doesn't the WGA just like decree that this is the case, that like WGA writers now can't work on audio projects unless they're like WGA and all these kinds of, and I was like, yeah, duh, they should just do that. Just plug in your thing into that other thing. And I didn't really realize at all that like nobody likes unions. Like nobody that works at these companies like wants to acknowledge a union. Like nobody wants, even though it's not that onerous, like in the grand scheme of things that are onerous that these places have to do, but they just like don't like doing it. They don't like, I think they see it as a failure or something if people do join a union. I don't know why. It's very hard for me to get in the mindset of people who don't like unions, because to me they make so much sense for so many people, even though they are annoying. Again, I agree they are annoying.
Cannot emphasize enough.
But I cannot emphasize that enough. But like, but fucking so is our healthcare system. So is the American healthcare system.
Yeah.
So are all these other bullshit, stupid things that we do. This one at least like makes sense and like is the only thing proven to like create a middle class in your country. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? There's so many things that make sense about doing it. And so anyway, so I thought we would just decide it and then it would happen, and then like we did it and everyone was like, good job, Matt, you helped everybody. And then but that's like just not what happened. It was like a bunch of meetings and a bunch of like, the thing is and you were sort of saying like you listed like, okay, there's, what we want to show the companies is that there's a bunch of people who like are pros who know how to do this, but the other thing that we really needed to show is that we were all talking to each other.
Yes.
That was like the most important thing, is that everyone needs to talk to each other. And this is what's different. And I didn't appreciate either how much they were saying like what we're doing is crazy and different than how most union organizing goes, which didn't make sense to me because it was so similar to how television works, how television writers' rooms and things like that work. But I think that was also unique and strange when they like pulled that together. It made, but normally it's like unionizing a shop. It's like we all work for the same boss. There's a bunch of us here who work for the same company, and we all together want to make an institution among ourselves that gives us leverage within our own company. But if you're a diffuse body of people, a bunch of different people working for a bunch of different companies, even if you all work in similar ways, which is why we thought we should be a union, it just makes it harder. And what makes it harder is because you have to tell everybody that you're doing it so that you can have the basically the threat that we're all of us, we've been talking, guys, and if you don't do what we say, we're going to stop working. Like, that really is it. That's the whole leverage. That's the whole thing. Even though it seems like simple and easy, I don't know, that's the thing that, and that was just like what we never quite got, or still haven't quite gotten to with the Audio Alliance. We've like we've done things that have been successful, but we've never like actually been like, okay, now all Audible shows are WJ. Okay, now all Spotify shows are WJ, which was the goal. Yeah. And I mean, anyway, we can go into why, but like that was sort of, I don't know, the thrust of what I wanted to communicate.
Yeah, and I think something else to point out is the fact that, this is a unionizing effort that is coming off of, decades of an existing union doing this kind of work in other spaces. Whereas, there have been other shops like a lot of things like Vox or The Onion, or I'm forgetting exactly what their union structures are now, but who have tried to start their own shops in-house. And that is also incredibly, incredibly difficult. And so like there's sort of different challenges depending on the space that you're in. And I do think that the diffuse nature of writers as a category is really tricky, especially then when you add in something that is as niche as audio. And from my perspective, I think one of the primary challenges was like there simply was never a volume of jobs in audio in my view. And it felt like that was such a barrier to getting enough sort of contracts in this space, because I think that so many of us were just constantly like looking for work. But yeah, I mean, totally. What do you view as sort of the major challenge that faced us when it came to like trying to unionize all of Audible or all of Spotify or what have you?
Yeah, I also do want to say the other thing that why this made so much sense to me and I think to us, but made no sense to other people, is also just that we know what it's like to write, and we know that like writing for television and writing for audio are really, as from the writing perspective, are not that different. They're really like, there are absolutely differences, but like it's a big difference. I would say it's a much bigger difference between writing for like a comedy variety sketch show than there is writing for a scripted narrative show versus writing for a scripted narrative TV show and a scripted narrative audio. You know what I mean? So like, yes, that's not crazy. It's like there's differences, but they're not that different. I think after that point, other people start to think they're different. I guess just because like your ears are different than your eyes or something. I don't know why it seemed so crazy to people that radio people wanted to, when from my perspective, I'm doing the same fucking job, like almost identically for this. Other than that, if anything, it's easier because you don't have to spend as much fucking money doing this. So why don't we make a bunch of these? Anyway.
Right, exactly.
Right, exactly. Yes, right. So but to your point, the issue, I think also, and I'll never know how much of this is by design, how much of this is like Amazon not wanting to ever unionize or whatever. But it was just simply very rare and difficult it was rare for someone to work on 2 Audible projects, for example, or a project or 2 Spotify. Like I worked on something for Spotify. I sold something to Audible. I sold something to Lumen. Like it's very rare for someone to do 2 of the same, with the same, even if one is successful, is what I've sort of found. And that's a little bit what it takes, is because we need to catch somebody while they're doing their deal. Like when you're at the beginning of the process with one of these places, that's when you ask to join the union. And what we needed to do was find people who were at that stage of the process. The thing that we could do was find people who had already done them because they had come out, or someone had been like, oh yeah, I'm working on it, or somebody who knows somebody. But nobody really, it's like some person who comes from playwriting or from some other, or from television, and is doing an audio deal. We were never very good at finding someone who was like going to do a project.
Yeah.
And then that was who we actually needed, was a whole critical mass of like the whole crop of people who are about to work on a show needed to get together and all decide not to. But that was kind of this impossible moving target to get to. And then, because even I would like go through and just cold email people who had made Audible shows just based on like they're on the roster for the WGA and they just made an Audible show. But many of those people wouldn't get back to me, or if they did, they're like, yeah, that was cool. I don't know. I'm trying to do something else now. I don't know if Audible, like there's a lot of like stuff like that. And then on top of that, the main thing was just like the contraction of the industry. Like Spotify, we were like, should we do Spotify first or Audible first? And Spotify just stopped doing this kind of thing.
Yeah,
and
they just don't.
A lot of places just stopped. Yeah. So then it was just like, should we just unionize Audible? And that was like sort of our main thrust, and my main thrust for like the whole time, in a lot of ways, just to like get a foothold in. And it just was always still just tough to get people, because also if people have sold to Audible, especially now when it's a tough time, you don't want to fuck up that deal. It's like a decent amount of money.
Right.
It's like, it's like a little bit of a lifeline in a time when it's hard to sell anything anywhere. And so asking someone to like put their whole deal on the line just to like maybe get health insurance, and half the time people are already getting it through their spouse or something, probably, you know what I mean? I think it was like difficult to I don't know. We've still been unable to like get just like sand through your fingers,
Completely. And I think that is really like one of the central challenges of any kind of union effort. Like, I'm completely with you. I'm incredibly pro-union. They're so annoying in so many ways. But I mean, like, I remember being really, really proud and surprised and happy when SAG went on strike a couple of years ago, right? Because I've been a member of the union for 10 years. And, one of the things about being an actor is that like, you are just the most disposable part of the process completely, unless you are the very top of the A-list, right? Like,
yeah, it's like you're either the most disposable or you're the essential component,
or you're the reason that it's actually being made, right? It's like there's no space between those things. And one of the things that has always made going on strike for SAG really, really difficult is the fact that it needs to be worth the risk, and the leverage needs to be there, right? And like actors historically just do not have leverage, but we were able to go on strike for the first time in 40 years because a lot of the top A-list was like, yeah, I also don't want my entire being cloned and churned out through AI. Like, that sounds bad. But I think when it comes to like audio writers, and I say this as somebody who has made their salary primarily through audio writing for the last 5 or 6 years, which I feel really, really grateful for, but I'm incredibly aware of the fact that my position is unique, and the fact that like most people are cobbling together, all kinds of different salaries from all kinds of different places. And it's really, really hard to go to somebody when they actually are going to get a big paycheck that's going to pay for their healthcare costs for the year, every month or whatever, and say, do you want to play hardball with this company that, like, if you do well on this, might hire you again in the future as well? It's like it's a very, very big ask, and I think that that's something that we just never have had the numbers for in audio. And I think also there are very few. I think in general in writing, I'm curious what you think about this. Like, there's very, very few of that, like, A-list, this is the reason that this thing is being made when it comes to writers, right? There are a couple in the same way that there are some directors, of course, who can just like go into any studio and be like, I have an idea, and get a blank check. But when it comes to writers, that's a very small portion, I think, of the sort of body of the WGA, and those people are not writing audio, right? Because they are writing the Netflix TV show that costs $30 million an episode.
Sure. Or if they are, or if they are writing audio, it's like in addition to the thing that they're doing, or sometimes it's even like a spin-off of a thing that they're doing.
Totally.
You know what I mean? It's
yes.
in the, there's like James Patterson shows that are just like kind of like working like WG writers that also do that. You know what I mean? Like there's different ecosystems that people come to it from, and then those people have different needs, and just having a writing gig and like cash in your pocket might make more sense to you personally than getting the health insurance and pension, getting the points towards that. You know what I mean? And or just like why even make a fuss if maybe if you are one of those bigger name people, you can just quote a higher cash fee. Or the thing is, a lot of those people actually do end up getting them covered under the WGA because of because we did actually make it now possible to do that. That was like one of the big wins that we had, was as a part of the minimum basic agreement, which is like the thing that that the WGA has. That's just like the big contract. The thing that we did do was we made it so that you now can join the union and you can be covered if you are working on a scripted fiction podcast. And so there are people who have exercised that, who have used that letter. There are people who are, doing that. So that was a success. We just haven't made it so that everybody is protected under that sort of thing.
Well, and I think what's crucial, and I might be misremembering how the MBA actually works, but I mean, it is a minimum basic agreement, right? Like it has a minimum that the writer has to be paid for episodes of a podcast, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and I think that to me, when that happened, felt so crucial, because one of the challenges that I've had through the years with SAG, not to constantly compare the two, is the fact that for both of these guilds, you have a minimum that you need to hit from projects that are covered by these contracts in order to qualify for healthcare. And there's just no universe in which an average actor who's not some big star being pulled into a podcast is making that money from audio fiction. And so often it was a calculation of okay, well, I can pay my actors a little bit more and get cash in their hand, or I can pay them less because I have to pay into pension and health, and they may or may not qualify for healthcare, and they may not get healthcare anyway. Whereas I think the WJ very smartly, the minimum is just the minimum that you need to qualify for healthcare, as far as I understand it. And so it's the union is doing what it's supposed to do.
Yeah,
when you sign the contract, which is great.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It was because otherwise, what's the point? That was very clearly that's the point of this. There is something. So in doing this, I do want to say there is something that I learned that I think most members of the WGA don't know. And even when we were on strike, it was walking in a picket line and talking about this sort of stuff. And then also in the coverage of the strike, it always sort of was by doing this and by getting in the nitty gritty of this, I was able to actually understand very clear eyed what the guild is and what the point of it is. And which is that what we're doing when we do a union project is we are exchanging our intellectual property rights for health insurance and pension. That's literally what we're doing.
That's such a good way of framing it.
We're giving up IP in order to have health and pension. That's the deal with the devil that the WGA is. And I don't think people understand that. So when we went on strike, for example, the way that I was thinking about that a little bit more than I think other people were, that we weren't just striking for better conditions and stuff. We were actually striking in part because we felt that the value of the intellectual property that we were giving to these companies was no longer what it should be. That they were devaluing the intellectual property that we were giving them in exchange for these things. And so we wanted more. And we want more because we also think they need to value these things higher, because they're the ones holding on to our intellectual property. They're the ones that actually hold the fragile little glass of our souls or whatever, that they own. Yeah. But the thing is, and to be very clear-eyed about joining the union, if it's a good idea or a bad idea, is when you don't do a union, if it's not that, you get to keep your IP, or you certainly should.
Sure.
I mean, and I know I'm sure some of the deals that, I don't know if you've always been able to retain your IP doing these deals, but you really should, because you're definitely not getting anything in exchange from these places if you're not getting at least some portion of your intellectual property when you partner up with a production company or whatever. But that's literally the deal. And so when I pitched and made my Audible show, and like made it that I wish was union so that I could, qualify for health and pension or whatever, but I still own the intellectual property of that project. So that's cool. I mean, I don't do anything with that or whatever, but I guess it's like nice to know. I could like turn it into a book, I think is what they like very specifically said I could do. But like, so you are exchanging your intellectual property for health and pension and also simulated rights. So there are also a few like other things that are not worth getting into that simulate if you had intellectual property, just like credit and like being attached to the project. Like they can't kick you, like authorship-esque things, but like that is the crucial thing. So like really also for people in the audio space or any space, if you don't want to give up your intellectual property, you shouldn't want to be a part of the union. Like that is the deal. You can't be a part of the union and also retain your intellectual property. The thing that like, if you really like think about this, that you realize is if we ever did somehow get fucking universal healthcare in this country, which we like should, I actually think it would be a critical blow to almost every union, but certainly to the WGA, because that's the whole point. And politically, I have my wife's uncle was like a union organizer for like millwrights in like Pennsylvania for a long time and was one of their like negotiators and whatever. And whenever I would talk to him about universal health care, even though he's fucking, works for union, he would be so against it because that's what he fought for. That's what unions fight for, is for health insurance. And you just give that to everybody, they lose that critical thing. And so anyways, it's an interesting thought experiment of like, if it wasn't a big deal to have health and pension, what would be the point of the WGA? Which I also think if you like look at like, in England or whatever, I don't think their union is as strong. We don't like talk about it as much. Yeah. But like the unions in other countries where they have those things, they're just not as essential.
Because unions grew out of necessity because we just like simply do not have the kind of universal healthcare, and also in terms of sort of the history of the labor movement, and also like a lot of entertainment unions do, I think it's less applicable to the WGA, but like workplace safety. And it's like, we have OSHA, but like, you still want to make sure that, a cameraman isn't going to be on their feet for 22 hours or whatever, right? Or that an actor is going to be safe if they're performing an intimate scene, which I have opinions about, the fact that we could be doing a lot better on that front in our contracts, but that's another conversation entirely. And those things I think don't apply as much maybe to the WGA, right? Because you're not doing the same kind of physical work that you are if you're a part of IATSE or SAG. But I still think that, if we had universal healthcare, I think probably SAG would basically cease to exist as well. And what's so bizarre to me is that, so I have maintained pretty much all of my intellectual property. The only intellectual property I don't have control over is stuff that like I made with someone else, right? Or
sure,
like,
it was somebody else's IP in general.
Exactly. It was like someone else's idea, and then like sure, I did like significant work, but I didn't create the world or what have you. And so I've gotten that sweet deal, and then like I've also been paid at the WGA minimum or above for most of those projects. And it's like, still, none of these companies have any interest in doing a union contract because I'm not union, and because like they don't see why I would want that. And whereas from my perspective, I'm like, you are giving me something that you don't have to be giving me, but that you have to be giving me because of this situation. And you wouldn't be paying me any more if we did a WGA contract.
Look, I know that's the thing too. I'm always like, in many ways, I'm like conflicted. It's like, do I want to change everything so that we aren't getting the intellectual property of our audio, of our stuff? And the thing is I always have these arguments in my head of like, when people are like really want to talk about that and the nitty gritty, and even with you in particular, because you are someone who is successful enough and has your IP to be like, boy, what if Lauren really decides one day that she just wants the IP that's more valuable than this other thing? And then you have to go down that. And to me, it was like, that's a very real and valid argument that we just never even got to the point to needing to have.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But like,
and honestly, like, if I actually like had healthcare, it's like I've been paying for my own healthcare my entire adult life. Right. And it sucks. And also I think that there are so many, I think that like being involved with the Audio Alliance and being both a member and signatory of SAG and sort of seeing both of these guilds from sort of different directions. And I think the fact that like, the two strikes that we had that were so much in response to like what is currently going on in technology, and also just, all of my friends and all of your friends and us being sort of like tossed about by the tide of the streaming wars. I think that one of the things that I've come to really appreciate about unions is the protection for the thing that you don't know about yet. Right.
Sure.
And also the benefit of the thing that you don't know about yet. Like, this is potentially, I'll cut this out because I don't know if this is something I like can or cannot talk about because I still don't understand why it's happening. But I am getting residuals for a podcast that I worked on
That's
many
incredible,
years
Lauren.
ago.
Don't ever tell anybody about that. You need to don't make sure whatever machine cuts that check for you, it does never learn.
I did
about what you're doing.
I did contact the WGA about it because I was like, I don't understand what this money is for. And it's like $20. It's like not very
that's
much.
Great.
But I'm like, I don't understand what this money is for because I'm not a member of the WGA. This is not my show. I'm simply a writer on this show.
Wait, what was it for?
It's for Passenger List.
Really? And was because it was...
It's being broadcast on terrestrial radio in Europe.
Oh, and that's why?
That's why. And so it's like I'm getting these 4-cent residuals from Swiss radio.
Yes. I can actually totally explain why that's happening.
Please,
which is that
thank you.
Yeah. No, it's just that's one of the main functions of what the WGA does is they collect residuals from it's like that is one of the things about plugging into the WGA is there are simply apparatuses that also you as an individual simply could not take part in. There's just no way you'd be able to figure out how much passenger list is playing in Brussels or whatever. Yeah. So the WGA has created an international network it participates in. I don't know much more than that, where one of their main jobs is to collect your residuals for writers in another country and then get those and then disperse them to people in the United States. And I believe one of the largest liabilities or whatever that the WGA carries is millions and millions of dollars of those that are unpaid to people because the WGA was unable to track them down in the United States and those people never claimed them.
Wow.
So they sit on a huge chest of collected residuals from international projects and they just have that they haven't been able to connect the pipes to the person in the United States, but they were able to connect the pipes to you. So you're earned those and you are benefiting from this huge WGA apparatus simply because legally that's what they're supposed to do. That is they're a fiduciary agreement is that they do that for people in America, whether I guess as proof here, whether they're members or not.
Well, this is what shocked me so much is I went back and forth with them a little because I think actually I first got in contact with the, accountant at the WGA or whatever because they'd sent it to my apartment in LA because that's where I lived when I was writing Passenger List 7 years ago.
And these didn't start until 7 years later or something? It took them a while?
Yeah, I mean, I guess
it took them a while.
It took them a while. I guess, well, and also I think that Passenger List just hasn't been broadcast on these radios until, the last year or so.
Okay.
But I was very much, very clear with them. I was I'm not a part of the union. I don't know if I am owed these, whatever. And they were no, you are credited for these episodes. So you get the residuals for that. And that I think so perfectly put into focus why unions as infrastructure are so important in America specifically, right? Because we don't have anything like that in our government, and the fact that all these people have worked very, very hard to build this guild that I'm not a part of, but I still benefit. I think is true of
totally
every union, right? Even when I was a non-union actor. There were still things, there were practices on set, there were, day minimums that even non-union projects would kind of adhere to because most actors are, going to expect a particular, level of professionalism and rate. And so it's it is really the rising tide lifts all boats thing. And so I like to think that, even if we haven't necessarily made the progress that we would have hoped we would by this time with the Audio Alliance, I do think that what you were describing earlier of just all of us talking to each other and the number of conversations I've had over the last 6 years where it's what is this company paying you for this number of scripts? What is this company giving you in your contract? Because
so important to just talk about
so
how it's
important.
Getting paid.
Yeah, and I really think that the WGA has really brought those people together in a way that being in the indie audio drama community prior to that was not doing.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that's the other major win was bringing people together. We do have this nice like Discord channel where people can ask each other questions, or just like a way to find other people. Like if you're listening to this podcast right now and you're like, how much should I get paid for something? Like reach out to us. Like the number of people who have just reached out to me personally to like show me a contract or talk to me about it because they know I'm involved in this, and then I was able to help them get more money. Like those are all also wins. Like I do think, yeah, right. Like the first of the Onion, the very first time they're unionized now, but the WJ tried to unionize them when I worked there for this YouTube project that we did. To make Sex House, they tried to unionize us for that, and we didn't. We decided not to. We like kind of got a little like scared, or it didn't quite make sense because we were all about to get laid off anyways because we'd all refused to move to Chicago and we were going to stay in New York, and it was only for this project. But even in just the negotiation, by talking to the union, by them knowing there was the threat, they guaranteed us a full year of work, and they upped our rates like significantly just because we were talking to the union and they were scared. So like just having the union in existence, yeah, the benefits like trickle off to everybody. And I also think, there was another world, the world that we were all envisioning that still doesn't make sense to me why it didn't happen, of like audio dramas getting bigger and bigger, and these big star ones getting turned into more shows and becoming bigger pieces of intellectual property like we all thought was like going to be happening. And I still don't understand why not. And then in that situation, it would have made a ton more sense for you to join the WGA and then go off to one of the shows that you sold because it had been turned into one of these things, or because a friend of yours sold a show, you know what I mean? And then it would have flipped the other way for you. I imagined argument with you that I don't think we probably would have never even had, because you seem to like the union and want to join it, even though I would have probably been like, Lauren, that this is not necessarily in your benefit to do this thing that I'm asking you to do. I want you to go into it with clear eyes. I can't hold that on my conscience that you're duped into this. But like it would have maybe flipped anyways, and you know what I mean? So it would have made more sense for you to exchange, and that was sort of what we were hoping for. And that still might happen. I don't know. You know more about where audio fiction is right now than I do. I haven't done a project since I think the Audible one I did a few years ago, and I didn't sell another thing to Audible, and then all the other shops closed up, and it costs a lot of, I don't know, I demand a good amount of money, and I also just like haven't been inspired to do something independently yet so far. But anyway, so I don't know, do you feel, I don't know, did you also feel like there was momentum around the fan bases were growing? That I don't know, where is the medium at as far as how you see it?
Great question. And I'm curious too to hear how you think sort of things are in the more traditional space, because in my view, so much of audio fiction and the way that it sort of shifted over the last 6 or 7 years is in response to the larger sort of Hollywood apparatus, right? And sort of this influx of money and sort of this promise of IP sort of ballooning out into other mediums, coming a lot from the like TV and film side of things, right? Of all of these studios sort of, making things and hoping that they would eventually go to TV. And I think that there's still, some of that floating around. I get, inquiries every now and then, and, this project here is sort of having a TV conversation and that project there. But my impression of like how TV is going right now is not great.
Yes, no, I think that's the correct impression.
Yeah. And I do think that has like, and I'm not like blaming TV for this, but I think that like that has trickled down into audio fiction, because I think that just like the way that and this is maybe a larger conversation, but the way that I feel is that like the streaming wars that began in the early 2010s have ended and nobody won. Right? Like we all just kind of lost, because now we're in this like weird landscape where like, and of course with the introduction of AI and everything, like I think that there's this like real reluctance to be buying original stuff even at like the TV level. I think even like publishing is going through it right now, and because everybody's like scared of TikTok and like he doesn't know how to like market anything traditionally anymore. And so like in my view, audio fiction right now is where it was in 2014, 2015, right? Which is that like there's like a shop or two that's still paying for original fiction, and Audible is absolutely like the main shop that is still paying for original fiction. And then there's like all of the indie folks who are doing stuff and trying to make things independently and crowdfund. And I do feel like I've seen a lot more successful crowdfunds this year than I have in previous years, which is like very encouraging. The way I've been describing it to people is that like, you know, you and I kind of like came out west early on and like found a town that a couple people lived in, and then like the gold miners came in, and now the gold rush is over, they've all left, and so there's this kind of like this ghost town, but like we still live here. And I don't think that that's a bad thing necessarily. Like, this is a very weird comparison, but a couple hours from Seattle, where I live, there's a town called Leavenworth. Do you know Leavenworth?
Christmas town. I know all about it.
Yeah.
No, I have a bunch of family in Seattle, and they keep trying to get us to come out for Christmas to Leavenworth, and they're like, "You don't know? It's beautiful. It's snowy. It's a Dutch wonderland or something, right?"
Yeah, it's a really lovely place. I've only been for Oktoberfest. I haven't been for Christmas, but I want to go. But it's this really funky little town, about 3 hours from Seattle, that was a logging community, as many towns in Washington were, in Western Washington were, for a long time. And then in the 70s, the logging industry was sort of collapsing. And so some person in Leavenworth was like, let's pivot to be a Bavarian tourist town. And they changed everything, including like the McDonald's, sign and everything, to be sort of like a cute Bavarian village in the Alps. And like, that's their thing now. And I don't know, I just think about that and sort of think about like, okay, well, what's audio kind of going to be? Like, what is this going to transform into? I think we'll still have, there are still loggers in Western Washington. I think we'll still have audio fiction podcasts, but I do wonder, sort of with like the changing landscape of just storytelling in general, like back to sort of like, I don't know what I don't know yet about the future and sort of what the medium is going to bring. I do think that my sort of North Star at the moment is like Dropout, and sort of like, how can we do that for audio? Yeah, sure. Like, how can we kind of get like fan bases so excited that they start monetarily supporting like entire, houses of audio fiction?
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, how are you feeling about the industry overall? Like both audio and the broader sort of TV and film industry?
Yeah, I mean, similarly. I mean, I'm very single-minded. I just like lay it all at the foot of Mark Zuckerberg constantly. Like, that's to me, it's just all like social media. I mean, TikTok too. Well, like even just you brought up, it's like, are people no longer interested in these kinds of stories, or like, is that interest waning or holding firm, or is it just much harder to market this to people and for it to be something that people find and discover and want to delve into and be a part of?
I think it's that. I think the interest is still. I think actually the interest for like original stories is like even higher now than it was a couple of years ago, and just like
totally,
there's so much, and the people who are spending the most on marketing and getting the most eyeballs are the people who are like making, the 17th remake of a movie that came out in the 80s.
Sure, because it's easier to market that. It's easier for people to know about it. And I think that is like, to me, the damning. I mean, I just constantly am like, I mean, again, like I do think that the goal of these tech companies is to undermine institutions and to undermine like things that people work together to make. And like ambitious like audio dramas, even if you are a one-person shop doing it, is still more ambitious than a little fucking TikTok that somebody made. And for many reasons, and I do think the dopamine and like the infinite scroll and whatever, and becoming like a suicidal teen because all you do is you fucking flick your thumb all the time or whatever. Like I do think that's part of it, but I do think people want to get out of that, but it's hard for them to like know how to. And then if they do, the world that is on the other side of it still hasn't caught up or become something really cool to necessarily be a part of outside of that. And then I do, and I think part of that is just because ad revenue has been sucked up by all these companies, whereas it used to be like flush in these other industries. And like, it's just like you water the soil and many trees find, the roots find the water and then they grow. But if it's dry and there's a desert and there's no water anywhere, maybe you're like watering one specific tree and that can grow, but you can't get the whole forest. And I think you need that whole forest in order for it to work. I mean, Dropout, I think, is a great example of something that absolutely is like a little success in this like fucking darkness. The other one is honestly The Onion right now. Like the Onion has new ownership. They started selling subscriptions. They are like but the thing is this is kind of like cockroach shit is what I say. You know what I mean? Like you're paying somebody to email you. Like that's what like that's like the big thing is like newsletters, and you're paying someone to email you, or you're like The Onion is they pay us to mail you something, to mail you a newspaper in the mail. And that like, and a number of people, 50,000 people or whatever are down to do that. But I bet more would be or if only just the whole internet and the whole media landscape wasn't nuked, we could kind of rebuild it in a way where we could properly, position and properly market. And that's what gets me too, is like, I don't like marketing the things that I do in the way that's successful on social media, because I actually don't, that's just not my vibe. You know what I mean? Like, that isn't my way of like being like cool or whatever. That isn't, and then it's not the kind of people that I want to attract. So the only people that are like succeeding in a lot of those spaces are people who are able to market well on social media, or have fan bases that are like native to those spaces and in those like that language of how that works. And Dropout, I think, is a good example of like a very online community that like is like kind of meeting the like the vibes and the people that they like on Dropout. But like, that's just one like slice of what comedy is, for example, to me. And I think a similar sort of thing with like audio dramas, like I really loved meeting all the people that I got to meet through you and through the audio drama space. Everyone was so lovely and so talented and so cool. But the truth is, a lot of those shows weren't necessarily my cup of tea. Sure. Personally. Yeah. Which, and I think what I did wasn't necessarily theirs, but like it was always like sad to me that like it couldn't, I don't know, like social media made it so that you had to promote and you had to become and you had to like be in this way that just wasn't the way of so many other people. And I think we're just like losing those forms of art and losing those forms of artists and losing those forms of like writers, simply because their work isn't meant to be presented or promoted in that way. And so that I actually think is an underrated like impact of all this sort of stuff, especially because there are success stories of people who are able to do well on social media. For example, fascists, like they're really good at promoting it. Like TikTok and these things is great for them. Oh yeah. So it's like, do people want more fascism, or is fascism just really good at being marketed on these platforms? Like,
well, I mean, there's so much there, and you're so right. And The Onion, just as a quick aside, is one of my sort of favorite stories of the last year, because Ben Collins, the guy who became the CEO of The Onion, it was for many, many years my favorite disinformation reporter, who was doing amazing reporting on like the darkest and scariest places on the internet and of like right-wing conspiracy nonsense. And so it's like a nice, like, it feels like a nice like retirement for him. I'm sure that job is stressful, but to sort of go from like basically only looking at like the fascist stuff online to running a paper that's all about fun and joy, I think is great. But they are still climbing up the hill of getting attention, despite even being like an incredibly legacy piece of branding. And I mean, I'm on TikTok. I hate it. I hate being on TikTok, but like, I don't know how else to get people to listen to my stuff. And like, I'm not going to be on
or feel
X
like
anymore.
You're like a part of what it is. Sure. Or just to know what the culture is. Like everybody, there's this huge like lie that like, finally everybody is able to get exactly what they're interested in. The algorithm is for you in particular, and that's like such horse shit. It all seems the same. And also there's this fundamental thing of like, well, wait, like how does somebody learn what they like? Like how can I learn and develop how can I develop an interest that then will be fed by the algorithm if all there is the algorithm make, you know what I mean? Like, why would I ever like, I want to see things that I like, but like, how are kids supposed to learn what they like or develop taste or develop, being an individual among all this stuff when it's all just the same sludge bullshit? I mean, obviously AI is going to make all this even fucking worse, or maybe not. I'm a little bit that like, maybe they overplayed their hand with this garbage.
With you. I think it's kind of a nothing burger.
Yeah, totally. And it just sucks ass, and everybody knows it fucking sucks ass. And these companies are paying so much money to suck more ass than they've ever sucked in the past. And I think that hopefully, I pray that will collapse them. And then, but the thing is like I would switch off social media if you gave me the button to like delete it, I just in a moment, like not even hesitating. I would no question. I would fucking like, right. And there are those studies that like people would pay more, it's like how much money would it take to get you off of social media? Have you heard about this study? They did this thing with college students like how much would you, and like it would be like $20, but it was like, okay, what if everyone was off? And then it was like, oh, it was negative. It was like they would pay for
I would pay you money.
yeah, we're trapped in this. And the thing is,
Yeah.
I just know, like, creative people like you and I, and the people who like make things and are driven to do this stuff, if we got rid of these things that supposedly help us find our fans or whatever, I'm positive if we got rid of this fucking on the rails internet and went back to like open world game internet and open world fucking media,
Yep.
like it would be so much better for us. And drives me crazy. The creator economy idea drives me fucking nuts. Like all these everyone's always like, I want to empower creators. Like that's what I believe in my heart. And I'm always just like, this is such horse shit. Like, don't empower creators. Like, fuck creators. Fuck whatever that is. Fuck this whole apparatus.
I completely agree. I hate that my job is honestly best described as like an online creator. Like I hate that. Like I it's terrible. Well, I'm like, you know, I've got my little studio where I make my little podcast and stuff. And like I just had a meeting like last week with, you know, like a potential, like every now and then I get these inquiries from like, you know, VC funds or whatever. And like sometimes I'll sort of entertain the conversations because like I like money and I would like money to make my little podcast. But every single time
a rich guy is interested in little old me. Sure.
But it's like, it's so like what's so bonkers about it is that like it's these, you know, massive multi-billion-dollar companies sort of coming and being like, hey, you have like a thing that we perceive as valuable because we just are sort of trying to like suck up all of the media companies that exist out there. And like, we're going to talk to you like you are a business and like, you know what you're doing around, you know, like we're going to talk to you like you're the CEO of like a tech business. And I'm like, right. I'm an artist. Like, I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to that kind of stuff. Like, if you want to give me money, great. But like, I'm not going to talk to you about ROI. Like, that's just not like, that's not my job. That shouldn't have to be my job. And like, in some ways, I've sort of backed myself into that corner by like having a studio and by being like an executive producer for a lot of shows and things like that. And there are elements of that I really enjoy. But yeah, I mean, there's also,
but that's the horrible thing is that's not what you should like, just because you're all, and you're really good at cultivating your fan base and of like driving a community around what you do. Like you're so good at that.
Thank you.
And it's so wonderful. And I think people really appreciate that. But the fact is you shouldn't have to do that. you simply should just be like cool Lauren, and your fans should like think, oh man, it's cool when Lauren makes something. And like, oh, it's really special when I get to interact with her in some way, but it shouldn't be the like, you know what I mean? Like you've already got a job. You're already trying to make the thing that everybody likes you for. And then if you're also out there being a person that everybody like, it's like, well, do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, it just, the snake starts eating its tail so fast. And
and I think there's also a whole conversation to be had here that, I don't think we have time to get into now, but it's just around like around like gatekeepers, right? The infrastructure of like criticism has totally broken down. The infrastructure of like, of the things that would create taste and that would expose people to things that maybe are a little bit different than what they expected, you know, like the experience of like just going to the movie theater to like see a movie that you've never heard of, right? Like that kind of thing I think is few and far between these days in a way that like is ceding ground to just sort of the infinite scroll. You're just getting more of the same thing in a way that I think is totally snake eating its own tail. Like it's getting us nowhere artistically or culturally.
I think gatekeepers are another one of those things where they were annoying, but the alternative is Satan.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like I was right there with everybody like railing against gatekeepers. And believe me, working in television, all you're doing is like, these execs are idiots. Like the network wants to do this dumb thing, like all this fucking shit. But then if you actually get rid of the gatekeepers, it turns out like all the gates, just like the whole like castle never existed.
Exactly.
And it just vanishes and you're like fucking fucked. And so, the true thing is like, there isn't, this like there's all these like the arguments of like, you know, you're just mad because like you're entrenched in the system, and me, somebody who doesn't have any of the resources and like things that you had, like now finally I can compete with, you know, like that like voice in your head that may or may not be a real person that's online or whatever, but like it is. But the truth is like I wanted to do this thing. I started doing it. It was hard. I like got better and better at it. And then sometimes people started acknowledging what I was doing. And like, that's who you want to be making the stuff for you, is people who, right?
Yes. And like, crucially, to bring us back around to the Audio Alliance and what's next for the Audio Alliance, like you used that experience and that position to then gather other people who wanted to be doing the same thing and empowered those people to speak to each other, to create an organization that is trying to get better pay for them, trying to get healthcare for them. Like, exactly. Like you are exactly the type of person that like you want gatekeeping just a little bit.
Sure,
You
yeah,
know?
or just making a little bit of a place. Like it's not even a gate, like it's like just a little like keep, just a little keep where
keep.
you can come in, or a little inn, or like whatever.
Exactly.
Like otherwise you've got no town. Like you're just like getting rid of all towns because sometimes there's somebody who welcomes you to the town or whatever, and you don't want to make that. And occasionally that person decides like, you know what, you're a Nazi and you shouldn't be in the town or whatever. Or honestly, like your shit sucks and you shouldn't fucking perform at my theater. Like that's fine.
That's okay.
Like also like I've made tons of bad stuff that like shouldn't go.
We all have.
Being a comedy writer, but like being a comedy writer, it's like being at the Onion. Like that's the best training you get is like you submit 10 headlines and one of them maybe gets like on like the maybe pile list. You know what I mean? Like you just have to kill so many darlings. But it's also like, thank God, one of the worst feeling I ever have creatively is when I work for a place that doesn't have a good like barometer for, you know, that lets my bad stuff out.
Yes.
Then I'm always like, oh no, you shouldn't have gone with that
gone out there. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then it's like, yeah, I did technically write that, but I really wish it didn't, you know, like my job is to just spit stuff out.
Right.
And it's somebody, and I need my buddies and other people to be like, not this one, Klinman. You know what I mean? And sometimes I disagree and I'm like, yeah, that one. And I would say 20% of the time I'm right. And it's like, even when it is like the thing that I really feel passionate about, usually I'm like, fine. But every once in a while, nah, this is something here. And usually I'm wrong.
But fighting for it is also how you become better at the thing, right? Like
absolutely.
Both having to kill your darlings and fight for the thing. Like the number of things
100%.
The number of things that like I have one of the projects I'm developing right now is this show called Phantom Pulse about a rock band in the 90s that can exercise ghosts with their music. And I got to develop the pilot with a couple of like really, really just fantastic people. And it's like a story I really, really care about. It's something that like I was becoming totally obsessed with. And there were so many notes on the pilot that I would like, my first reaction was like, no, but like that's my favorite scene, or no, but I want to do that now. Like I want to, and then it's like you sit with it and you talk to your collaborators and you're like, yeah, you're right. Like it sucks that you're right, but you are right. And you're right for these various reasons that you can, explain well. And of course, we've all worked with like bad editors and bad execs and things like that. And that's a different problem entirely.
And even still and sometimes the note is bad and everyone agrees the note's bad and we're just going to do this anyway. You know what I mean? Yeah. But that's all part of it. That's like
Absolutely.
The whole fucking thing that you want people to be doing to make the thing for you as an audience member. Like all we're trying to do is make cool shit for you.
Yeah.
And I don't understand. I don't know. That's the whole fucking thing.
So I mean, what do you see as next for the Audio Alliance? Like, are you sort of thinking that we just sort of like wait and see what is going on with the industry as a whole, or
I don't know. I was glad you reached out and wanted to talk about it because I mean, we kind of have dropped off a little bit of what we're doing, but there wasn't much. And like I made a big some push to try to do stuff, and I got a little bit of traction on finding Audible people who were interested, but not as much as you know what I mean. It was just a little bit disheartening. And at a certain point, I think I had my daughter last year, and I was like, I can't. I have to like focus on other shit and get a job. Yeah, just like try to do other stuff. Also, my most recent projects have been in television, not in audio, and so I was like a little bit more focused on that.
Yeah.
And so like I don't know. I'm truly, if anybody does want to make another big push and try to get, I don't know the status of Audible. I don't know people. I don't even know anybody right now working on a show there. But if people, that to me still is the low hanging fruit.
Yes.
And it did seem like conversations that could happen. But it like would take that force. But the truth is, I think there just needs to be momentum towards the whole industry for all of us to feel this need again.
Yeah.
Where we're in enough of these rooms, and it makes and it would benefit all of us to do this. And I don't know. So it's more like, what's it going to take to like get back to that space?
I would, encourage folks to still join the WJ Audio Alliance Discord, which I'll link in the description.
Do. And I do think it is active. A lot of the channels people do ask questions and stuff. I think just our organizing committee. Yeah, I just think we've lost I don't know. We used to have these events on Zoom. And they were nice, but I just felt like I was saying the same stuff over. I don't know. Also, let me know if you think that we should be kicking this thing back. No,
I mean, first of all, you are not responsible for like the Audio Alliance's health and wellness.
Thank you for saying that.
No, I mean, truly, you have done, and this is like another thing that I think is so important to recognize about organizing, and so much of what I have personally been grappling with in writing this show, which is sort of about like, what do you do when like everything is broken and like burning it down doesn't work, and organizing slowly and the right way doesn't work, and it's just like you just want to tear your hair out. And I don't have an answer to that, right? And the show doesn't answer that. But I think another thing to like really recognize, you know, one of the sort of points of like progressive activism in the last few years has been like, you can't do everything, right? So like pick like one, maybe two things that you really care about and like pursue activism in those spaces. And I think similarly to that, like you cannot sustain the thing forever, right? Like you have to pass the baton along to someone else. And one of the things that's giving me hope right now when it comes to the Audio Alliance specifically and sort of audio fiction specifically is sort of this return to indie audio making. And like I had a coffee a couple months ago with a creator here who is, you know, working on their own show and who is, you know, like 23 and like just like so bright and so excited and so motivated. And I'm just like, yes, okay, there are people coming up behind us who can pick the baton up from our like sad old withered corpses.
Well, I will say that's the thing that I always feel like, and I talk to friends in other industries about the same thing. The thing that makes me sad is like, I mean, look, I've had a wonderful career. I've gotten to work on a lot of different things. I always assumed by this point that I would be kicked to the curb by younger people who are doing cooler and better things than me. But I'm simply not. Because there's no one behind me. It feels like the thing that we did, you know what I mean? Like it's gone. You know what I mean? There aren't cool young TV shows that are funnier and cooler that I'm like mad about because like, oh man, they're hipper and neater than I ever could be. Just simply no one's making anything. And except like really low effort shit. Yeah. And that's like kind of this like even more like depressing thing. Like I'm still like one of the younger people in rooms when I work. And I don't understand why that's the case. I knew why, you know, when I was like, in my 20s and like, here's a hot new writer. But now it's like, wait, why am I still the only person who is like my age?
Yeah, it's like the thing of like you never want to be the smartest person in the room, and after a certain point in your 30s, you never want to be the youngest person in the room.
No, you don't. But it makes me really sad because like it's not like people aren't funny anymore. It's not like there aren't people who are interested in doing the same things and are as good and whatever. But there just isn't honestly, it's just there isn't the money sloshing around to fund this sort of stuff to happen. Yeah. And then that means there's less culture. And I really reject the idea that like, oh, people are just interested in other things. And I don't think so. I think people are just killing themselves. I think people are getting suicidally depressed because their culture fucking sucks because we seeded it. What did you think of that analogy, by the way? It was a new one for me of like our internet is like on the rails versus an open world video game.
I really like that.
Does that
feels
feel right?
Very accurate.
Does that feel right
to me? And actually, like when you were saying, you know, you would press a button and nuke all of social media. That's a conversation I've had many times before, and also agree. Except for like my one little pet website, which is Tumblr, which like I would genuinely have a hard time giving up. But I think what's interesting is like it is on the rails in the sense that like you do have like your dashboard that of the people that you follow, like your feed or whatever. But like I think sentiment and behavior, it is still a little bit of that open world, you know. And
it's still small. It's small enough that it can be, but also like it's, you know, Rails game, you know, small, you know, it's fun to play games that are on Rails, you know what I mean? But it's like, you know, that's what you're doing, but you also, you know, the world, I don't know, the internet could be so much more. Bless you and the Tumblr people. I've always like much respect. I'm like addicted to Reddit or whatever, which is like fine. I mean, but all these things could be better. The other thing is like we've now been fucking sitting in this version of the internet longer than we had the other version. You know what I mean? We've had smartphones longer than we had dumb phones. We've had, you know what I mean? These aren't new things anymore. These are just shitty things that are stagnating and shittifying and fucking sucking ass. And like, you know that they're, you know, why? To me, it's also like, man, if a social media site gets to 1 billion people, it should just be destroyed. And like people should make a new one. Like just burn down the forest and let new ones sprout up. Like that, you did it. You won the game, whatever the fuck. Now. Like like that, like I don't even, it's fucking crazy to me that this shit's allowed to exist. And the knock-on effects are to so many other creative industries. Yeah. That's what's like so stupid.
Yeah. Well, in non-bleak news,
That's right. No, but optimism. I'm optimistic that people are. I feel more and more like people see this and people are feeling this, and that this like urge and need for other stuff, I do feel it stronger than ever. And I think a friend of mine once said like the way out of this stuff is through it. Like you can't, like we just have to all go through the dark ages together and like really appreciate how much it sucks, and then make laws that make it so that whatever Mark Zuckerberg did, he goes to jail for.
Yeah.
But like, that's like, we just need to like do it as a society, and then we need to like exile the people. I won't say kill, exile the people that did this to us, because like, it's just getting worse. It's so fucking stupid.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be this way. I mean, that's like,
no, not at all. This is entirely a constructed reality by the dumbest, richest people.
I know. It's like, I'm glad these people are like working through their emotional issues, but I don't understand why I also have to participate.
Yeah, why is it our problem that this guy is getting divorced? Why do I have to,
you know? Right. What the fuck? Like, why? Like, man, I got my own shit. But like, I've done a lot of, you know, made sure my life is how I want it to be. I'm sorry, yours sucks. Why do you have to fucking drag me along with it?
Truly.
Oh, God, it just feels like that all the time.
All the time. All the time. If you were going to point listeners towards something, whether it's like a piece of art or an artist or an organization or anything that like is making you feel like we can get through this, where would you point them?
Yeah, the Volts podcast, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Do you know this podcast?
No, I don't.
So my other, like, I'm also like kind of like, I was a geology major in college. I'm like but my TV show that I just made is called High Science. If you want, just a science comedy show. I'm like a huge science nerd, and I'm a huge like green energy. Like, I did a lot of like research in college on climate change. Like, had it not been more fun, had I not been a little successful at doing comedy, I probably should have like gone into, my parents were scientists. I probably should have gone down some more route like that. But and even with like, basically the only thing that has given me hope is like this podcast and sort of the scene around green energy in general, and like fighting climate change, which is, even though like truly we are doing such bad, like this is what I was like, I fucking was riding with Biden till the end. He could have been a fucking corpse in a casket fucking, and I still would have voted for the guy.
Same.
Because he like passed all this legislation that was so good about climate stuff, and that was like bringing us like towards possibly actually like making the goals that we need to do in order to not completely wreck our planet, and or just make it unlivable. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that it's gonna be bad, it's gonna suck. But anyways, this podcast called Volts, that's run by some like reporter who's like really good in the space, a smart dude whose name I don't remember, even though I listen like every week. And he just interviews like very like, you know, deep entrenched in the weeds, like green energy things, but like diving into episodes of those every once in a while that are something that isn't too in the weeds for me, and learning about like the revolution that's happening in geothermal energy, which is like fucking like, there's been like huge breakthroughs in geothermal energy. The fact that like solar panels are getting so fucking cheap that they are now the cheapest form of energy in like more and more situations, and like pretty soon kind of all situations. And like we're like at this, like there are a bunch of smart people who like 20 years ago, like, you know, roughly our age, did actually go into those fields and did like devote their lives to it, and are like really making like huge differences in the kinds of like green energy and things that are happening.
Yeah.
And I was very much like, oh no, it's all fucked. And then I started hearing about this shit that was happening. I was like, oh no, like there are smart people who care and are doing cool things in this whole other space, and it like will help all of us. And that has been very like something that I've been clinging on to, and it will make you even more frustrated, the things that like fucking this administration is doing to dismantle all that. But in some ways, like the fucking this tide is rising too fast and too heavy for anyone to stop it, and that's been very cool to see. I mean, we're still like not out of the woods by any means, but that has been something that's like really cool to see.
That's awesome to hear. And yeah, I read this big, I think it was a New Yorker article about solar energy, and just like the strides have been made sort of quietly in solar energy in the past couple of years. And yeah, I mean, obviously we have many fights ahead of us with this particular political climate, but a perfect, I think, chaser to the shot of that podcast for listeners is Smarter, which is a show that I'm going to shout out and sort of give its flowers for a second here before I let you go, which is your Luminary show that I was like obsessed with long before I met you. Like
that's really true. I remember you said that you like listen. I mean, we were like cousins on Luminary, so I listened to your show too. But yeah. Which I also enjoyed.
It is just like a perfect send up of the tech industry, and like of so much of, I mean, you were saying earlier that like, you know, you and your friends kind of predicted so much stuff with your infomercial skits. And Smarter is like, remembering some of those episodes now in 2025, I'm like, holy shit, you guys really knew like what was coming. So I really think that people should go listen to Smarter, which is now on all podcast apps, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it was made by Team Coco, which is like Conan O'Brien's company. And yes, because of the Luminary deal, after 3 years, it fell out of Luminary, and then we could own it, and it's for free and whatever. And it was an outgrowth of those infomercials that we like doing. We're like, let's try to do a narrative show around this, and where every episode was like a different profile of a different tech company, but had like a through line arc or whatever. And you'll listen to it. I do really think, I was listening to it just the other day, I'm like, boy, this does like hold up in a lot of ways. It's like, it's like it takes tiny elements of everything that did become like the AI, like Gen AI revolution or whatever you want to call it, that's fucking happening right now. It like dissects like tiny little elements of what that could be, like where it's not, instead of like some big thing that you chatbot with, it's like, what if your fridge was like smart enough to know if your cheese was expired? Yeah. Like, and like told and like emailed you, like notified you every time a spore grew on one of your like pieces of cheese inside the fridge, like shit like that. And like different levels. There also is this episode on auto news that is super close to like what happened, because we like it was starting to happen. But in it, like the bad guy is like basically like a guy like who's kind of like a conservative like tech bro who gets poisoned by his own platform. He like starts to believe the bullshit that is on his like auto news generated platform, until he's joining the revolution that he knows is fake, even though and it was just like, oh man, like there's so many things in it that I really do feel like. Anyways, I also was just like, man, I would love to do more of that shit.
I would love for you to do more of that show.
Yeah, I don't. But it's like, that's the thing. It's tough to like get it up. So the thing was, we pitched it as a show with the Conan people. Like after it came out, we pitched it as a show. And it was during the pandemic. It was like tough, but like the pitches, we really got this sense of, even then, people being like, I don't understand. Elon Musk is cool. Like, why do you not like people? It was great. And this is 2020, 2021. Like, it was really weird. And now I do think people like get it. It was crazy. I mean, anyway, so that was thank you for shouting out the project, and thank you for liking it. We did
really genuinely do. Like, I'm not just saying that because you're here. Like, I really, anytime anybody asks about comedy in audio fiction, I'm like, you have to listen to Smarter. That's like the first show that I recommend to people.
We also, I don't know if I've talked to you about it, we also recorded it in a way that I really liked, where we really tried to not be in the studio for it. Nice. We really tried to record it like in spaces. I don't know how much you do that too, especially because it was a fake NPR kind of thing. Yeah. So we would do like, if we were interviewing somebody at their like self-driving car company, we wouldn't go to an actual warehouse, but like in the recording studio that we were in, we would find like the biggest open space so that it like felt like that, and then would do like a walk and talk interview with like a handheld mic and stuff like that in order to capture the feeling of it. And then we did do sound design on top of it. But I always really loved that we tried to stay out of the booth as much as possible and do stuff in person, but in spaces that felt like what we were trying to do.
Yeah.
I don't know. Have you ever recorded or do stuff like
Passenger List season 2 was recorded all in the pandemic. So obviously that's its own thing. But Passenger List season 1 was recorded exactly like that. So it's like when, the characters are in a car, we're in a car. When they're on the street, we're on the street. Like,
in a car, I think is one of the things that you cannot fake.
It's really hard to fake. Yeah.
It's and I think it's because we spend so much time in a car. We all know what the acoustics of a car sound like. And also it's not that, it's like kind of the best recording setup anyways to do it. Like if you're going to record a scene in a car, fucking do it in a car.
Yeah.
Like, you got to do it.
Well, thank you so much, Matt, totally. for taking the time. I really, really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
I think this is actually genuinely made me like more hopeful about sort of union efforts in the future than I had been feeling.
I'm glad, and I'm excited to hear your show that has union organizing as a part of it. There are so few shows that are about union organizing, but the ones that exist all like rock, and it's like, anyways, it's just exciting to me to do union organizing in a piece of media. I'm sure it's going to be great. I'm excited to hear it.
Thank you so much.
Hello,
havoc, wreakers. I've got a small but significant announcement. Lauren Shippen, the head of Atypical Artists and my personal meat puppet, will be doing a marathon live stream on Halloween from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Pacific Time. Part of this live stream will involve a listening party for our grand Season 1 finale, which drops that day. So if you'd like to listen along with Lauren and other fans, go to harperandhavoc.com and sign up for updates. All right, back to our main program. Hello, my little havoc wreakers. Harper's asleep at the moment, so I thought I'd take this opportunity to tell you about something I find wickedly entertaining. Josie's Lonely Hearts Club is a semi-scripted audio drama set in New Mexico's second-best relationship call-in show. On air, Josie Helen mends the broken hearts of a weekly collection of hilarious improvisers. Off air, listeners eavesdrop on the life of Josie's secret identity, hapless, neurotic Joanne Holtzinger. Next season is their soap opera season, featuring murders, twins, fake pregnancies, betrayals, and all the high-stakes drama that makes humanity worth keeping around. Speaking of humanity, this show features some of its best. Dropouts Ross Bryant, Had Apocalypse's Abigail Turner, Civilized Christy Bolton, Jesse Cannizzaro of Leylines, Kyle Prue, Hal Lublin and Mark Gagliardi from the Thrilling Adventure Hour, and James Urbaniak. And I've heard there might be a familiar voice on this next season. You'll laugh, you'll cry. It'll hit you right in that funny bone with its somewhat sexy and extremely silly vibes. Season 5 premiered June 4th. Join the club by subscribing and catch up on every episode wherever you get your podcasts. It comes out the first and third Wednesday of every month, so there's always something delicious to tune into. Enjoy!